Okay. And, the news media, I was in the news media a lot, especially back in the 80s. And that was when the news media changed. That was when there were major cutbacks. That was when they started to go for profit over just public service. The old FCC idea was you made your profit on the entertainment shows. And then as a public obligation, you had a news program. And it wasn't supposed to be a profit center. And that was supposed to keep it clean and just deliver the information. In the 80s, they started firing people and bringing people on to say, we've got to make a profit with our news department. And that's when they started saying, what you want to be talking about is sex. You want to be talking about, that boring old budget. Don't talk about the boring old budget. Let's get right to the condoms, because that was during the AIDS crisis. They were being able suddenly to talk about sexual behaviors that no one had ever mentioned on air before. This was a big thrill to some of the news directors. I got on a lot of fights back in those days with my, bosses, and just saying this is a stupid, cheapening of the news. But when you when on the one hand, you fire all your investigative reporting, because investigative reporting is the most expensive thing, because you pay these guys to go out and do these long-term stories, and they don't really deliver for months, and then suddenly you've got one story and it's over. So you got rid of your investigative guys, and the people who could still afford investigative reporters, like the New York Times, have become so politicized and corrupt that their own investigations disappear down the memory hole. Like when they did, if you went on the New York Times business page and read about the 2008 crash, you would have learned that much of it had to do with Democrat politicians like Barney Frank defending the corrupt and stupid practices of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and giving home loans to people who couldn't afford them, which Wall Street then abused by packaging these things and getting people to pay for it 1,000 times. And when all that collapsed, as George W. Bush was pleading with them to stop doing it, right, when all that collapsed, suddenly it was all Bush's fault, all the Republicans, all Wall Street. We keep hearing Wall Street, Wall Street, Wall Street. And Barney Frank, who should be, in my opinion, in prison, it wrote the bill that was now going to fix everything, the Dodd-Frank bill, which is ridiculous, because Chris Dodd and Barney Frank had their hands in that collapse more than anybody. So all I'm saying is the truth was in the New York Times, but the New York Times is so corrupt, they basically buried it on the business page. You never would have heard of it. The people who read the New York Times did not know what was in the New York Times, because they bury it and they don't write about it on the op-ed page, which is the first thing everybody turns to.